Okay, so I've got my bathroom walls drawn and the door, but I still need to do all of the plumbing fittings, and then I'm going to add a tile for my bathroom floor. So I'm just going to go over a few things there, maybe to do with blocks a little bit, but mostly focusing on the options that you have for hatching, because they can often lead to problems when you work with say bathroom elements, because you will need to hatch around some complex shapes like the WC here. So, like I said, firstly I'm just going to put in the plumbing fittings, and you can see, looking at my list of layers, I don't have a layer for that, so I'm going to make a layer quickly called, well, a plumbing, and if you prefer, you could call it bathroom, bath, it's up to you, really, as long as you've got something for all your bathroom fittings. And again, the colour is entirely up to you, but you should make the line weight either light or a light medium. I suppose you could go up to about 0.25 if you like that heavier look. If you're doing a light pen, if you prefer a lighter look to your drawings, you could go down to about 0.13 even. But again, I'm going to go in between and do about 0.18. So I'll make that the current layer, and I'm going to then just insert from the library. So using the insert tool, actually I'll do it on the home tab and just go to insert there. And remember, you've got the more options button down the bottom to bring up the dialog box. And you need that, so you can click browse and then go to the library, which again is on the P drive, and then interior design, and you'll see your AutoCAD library. Now you're probably sick to death of browsing to that same place all the time, so I'm going to show you an easy way to make a shortcut to that. Just drag that folder to the grey bar on the left hand side, and it'll put a shortcut over there. So you can just click on that and it'll take you straight to it every time. You have to do that on each computer, so if you go to a new computer you'll need to make the shortcut again, but on your computer it'll stay there. And then again we can go to one of these folders, so I'm going to go to Blocks 2D, Bathroom, and then Toilets, WC pan, sorry, and get the one that is closest to what you can see in the image over here. Well, actually, sorry, because AutoCAD's minimised, you can't see it. In the image over here, you can see the toilet. So I'm just trying to find something close to that. And this one here is fairly close. Just bring it across so you can see it. So that's the Royal Wall Hung Pan. Going to go up one level, and we've got here this WC Pan Concealed is similar. Any of those. I was hoping there would be a nicer WC with a concealed system. Yeah, actually I'm going to go for this one. I think that's the best of a bad selection. So WC Pan 001. It's not exactly the same as this, but it's good enough. I'm going to double click on that. And I've got their specifying screen ticked for insertion point and for rotation, but not for scale. So just those two options there. So I'm going to click OK. So the first one for insertion point. And then rotation as well. So not the middle one, the scale. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK, and then I've inserted this before, so it's asking me if I want to redefine it. Normally if you see this you can just say redefine, that's fine. And so now I can see that WC on my cursor. Now I want this to go up against the wall. You can see here that we've got a projection which would be for the system. And are any of you planning on keeping that? No, you don't need to. Have you had a look at different options for your systems? Well, firstly, do you know what a system is?
Yeah, the
Water tank, exactly. Yep. Exactly. That's right. Yep, the thing that's often, that's right. It can be in the wall, often it's not. But then, have you had a look at some of the good options they've got now for the in-wall systems? How small you can make them?
That's the one that I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's right, yeah, they're fantastic, yeah, that's right. So have a look at those, and then you'll see that you don't need that huge projection anymore, so that might give you a bit more room in your bathrooms. Oh, yeah, 70 mil, yeah. Yep, so you can do them in a 90 mil wall, it's amazing. And so again, I'm going to have my toilet there. This one actually does have a system, but even if you want one that doesn't, you can put it up against your wall. So what I'm trying to show you here then is how to get it to snap to this wall and not to the end point or the midpoint. Have any of you worked that one out? Because you can use the object snap tracking, which will, like this you can see there, it'll usually work, but sometimes it'll just keep snapping to the end point. So there's a really useful shortcut there. If you type NEA, NEA is the shortcut to nearest, which is one of those object snaps that at first might not seem that useful, but then you realise after a while it's actually one of the most useful. But you don't want it on all the time. So by typing NEA when you need it, it just turns it off, turns it on for that one operation. So here, NEA, enter, and now notice how it's giving me a snap anywhere I go on that line. So this way I'm not placing an accurate or a measured distance from the corner, but I don't need to. I just need it to be a point on that wall. Wherever I click, it'll get the closest point on the line. So that looks pretty good to me. And so I've done that, clicked, it's going to snap to the wall, and now I can use the cursor to rotate it and point it the right direction. That easy. So, so again, it's just that nearest shortcut which is going to help you. And then we've got the bench. I'll just bring it over so you can see. So I've got the really the vanity there, and of course the bath. So I might put the bath in just to line up to that. So again, I'm going to insert from the same library. I'm going to browse and then just get a bath. So they don't need to be the same fittings as the ones shown in plan, but you might want to get a similar size. So I'm going to show you there, if I get this one, which looks the closest, or maybe this one or this one, but no, I think this one's the closest. So again, I'm going to leave the same options ticked, click OK, and so this time I can't, in one operation, snap to the point that I want it to go to. So that's quite normal as well. You can always snap to another point. Here I'm going to snap to the corner. Let's just have a look at this. So, yep, so I'll snap to that corner point there. And then using the cursor I can again rotate to get the angle I want. Often here, it'll help you if you have ortho turned on. And now I can simply move the whole bath by selecting it and using the move tool, and just thinking about the base point that I choose. So I'm going to choose a base point where I want to snap to place this. So that would be this corner here, and then place it on the corner of the wall. So in 2 operations, we've got it where it needs to be. That sinks in the way, so I'm going to delete it. And then, I'm just sorting it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's in the right place. But then looking at this drawing, what's the other thing I need to change? So is that big enough compared to the one that you can see here? Probably not. Right? So that's smaller than the one you can see in this drawing. So we need to make it bigger. And that's a block. So how do we edit the block? Do you remember how to edit blocks? That's right, you can be tricky. That's the good way. If you want to be tricky, you can go into the different options for editing blocks, and you can even get it from the right-click menu there. But sometimes it's easier just to make it not a block anymore. So I really wanted to show you there, and make sure you know, is that you can explode any block. If you select it, just click on the explode button, and then it will just be a set of lines. And so then if you remember the stretch tool that I showed you, well, definitely last week, but I think even before that, I can extend this, but I need to know how much it can be, or it needs to be extended. So I'll just measure the distance from the bath to the WC. So it's about 750 mil. I wanted to take up about half of that, but I'll check my the distance from the wall as well to the bath. So that's 1300. And have you worked out a space that you should leave for your toilet as well? Or have you just been... A bit more. So from side to side, you probably want at least 800. No, from side to side. So from the 2 things either side of your toilet. So the space for your toilet should be about 800 at least. More would be good, but 800 is probably enough. So, so at the moment I've got 1300, and that means that I can stretch this 500. So I'm just going to click on the stretch tool, and then just to remind you one more time, the thing to remember when you're using stretch, and the reason that a lot of people can't get it to work, is because you need to select right to left. So clicking a window, starting on the right hand side, I'm now going to the left, and I'll click once I've got the points that my bath or that need to move in my bath. Enter. I can click a base point and then move in the direction it needs to go and type in 500, enter, and it stretched that direction. Now I can see visually it's enough room for the toilet, but maybe that's a bit tight looking at the door. So it doesn't hurt at all to do another stretch. And I can stretch it back down, so it's good practice for you as well. So I can try going maybe back 200, which will give me 1,000, which is a more decent space for the WC anyway. So that's to take it or stretch it vertically. Now I need to stretch it the other way because it's probably wider as well, looking at the bath here. So if I measure 750, and so do you know how to find bath sizes, real bath sizes? Would you get? Exactly, yeah. So don't rely on the things from the library. Those blocks have been made by other people just like you, and they probably guess the size in many cases, so you need to look them up in the Chroma catalogue or the Kohler catalogue or whatever you're using. And but again though, I'm just going to guess. I'm not going to look it up for you. So it is, at the moment, 750, and a bath this long normally would be wider than that, so I'm going to make it maybe 850. I know a bath that is 860, so that's pretty close. So again, we'll try using stretch, and we'll start with the again the window on the right hand side, and we'll just bring that over another 100. Yeah. Yep. Ah. Right, that's a bit weird. I'll have a look. I'll come over in a minute. Yeah, I'll look at it. Okay, so yeah. So the main thing there though is that I've at least got the bath the right size on the outside, and I'll maybe go through some things if you want to turn it back into a block. Sorry. Oh, yep, okay, so you could just draw a line maybe from the midpoint there, and then if you select the circle, you can just move it over so the centre snaps onto that line. That's one way. So I've got then the vanity, or the bench there, and by eye that looks to me like it's around 500 from the wall, so I'm just going to offset lines 500, and change them onto my bathroom layer. Now you'll probably find a shower block, but they're a really simple thing that you can draw as well, because they will basically be just a rectangle with a cross in the middle. So you can draw a rectangle probably almost as easily, and 900 by 900 is a pretty typical size. So in this case 900 comma minus 900 to make it go down. I'll just offset and draw a line crossing through the middle. So later you should really put a floor waste in there, but well, not a floor waste, but a drain in there. But otherwise, that's where you need the shower. And then you can see that we've got the basin sitting on top of the bench, so they can be inserted afterwards as well using a block. And I already have one that's pretty close. Sorry? That's just where the drain is. Yeah. So the pipes could be anywhere under there. We don't need to locate there, as long as you've got the drain, that's where you need to locate. So that indicates the fall. So those lines indicate that there's a slope to the drain. Okay, so you can see there that basin, not far off the one I want, but I'd probably replace it with one that's better later. And if you're going to keep the two, obviously have those. But again, those are things you can add at any stage. But essentially now I've got enough so that I can do what I really wanted to show you, which is the hatching for that bathroom. And even if you've done the hatching for your tiles, there are probably a couple of little things that you'll pick up from what I'm about to show you. And it's worth knowing, because you'll find that you'll need to do tiles in almost every project that you do, for decoration especially. So first thing is to have a layer for the tiles, which is different to the layer for the bathroom fittings. I'm just going to call it tiles. I'm going to call it bathroom tiles. And the colour, it's really up to you. I tend to use grayscale colours for things like tiles because I like to have them with a nice, really light line weight. I 0.13 or even lighter. I always think of these as being the bottom of the view, so they should have the lightest line weight possible.
Oh, 13? 113?
Yep. Yep. So I'll make it the current layer 2. And so, before I make my tile hatch though, I need to do a little bit more. And looking at this, can you see where the boundary still needs some work before it encloses where the tiles are? Exactly, that's right. So that's often where you need to close off your pattern. So do you know where the tiles go in a door? Where do they finish? Yeah, often it does. Not always though. In fact, not normally.
Where the door is closed?
Yeah, sometimes it does, but that's right.
Yeah.
That's the key. So for good design, especially good interior design and decoration details, that's usually the best detail, to have the tiles edge concealed under the door when it's closed. And so that means that the tiles end up almost in the middle of the door opening. And so if you draw a line from the midpoint of your door jamb across to the midpoint on the other side, that's a good point for your tiles to finish. So I've seen them, quite often you will see them on the other side, on the outside, and it's yucky. I don't like it. It's just a messy detail, and you see the tiles sticking out under the door, which is also messy. But it's messy also because water can have more chance of maybe getting onto a surface that shouldn't. So that's a good little detail that you can indicate in your drawings, and you'd be surprised how often people get that one wrong. So that should give me enough to do my tiles, and I'm going to go into the hatch tool and then show maybe a couple of other little handy hints that you might not know about. So when you're doing tiles and you're choosing a pattern, which pattern have you been using?
More similar to what you actually using on
Yeah,
the door.
that's right. Yeah, so if it's a square tile, then you could use the square pattern in here, and it is one of them. It's called net or something. That's right. So that will work, but there's a much easier way. So that's the hard way. The easy way is, instead of using the pattern option here, you go to user defined. That's right, and then you just put in the size you want the tile to be. So if it's a 200 tile, you make the spacing here 200. So it's to the right, so you've got the drop down here where it'll say pattern, but you can change that to user defined.
So that's only as a square versus rectangle?
Yeah, so you can do, if you've got double, double they still need to be even, so you'd have to do 2 hatch patterns. So you do one for the vertical lines and one for the horizontal lines, and then we can have a different spacing. Yeah, that's right, yeah. So, so it's only if you've got rectangular or square that you can use user defined, but it's really good for those things. So now you can see that it's working, but can you see what it's getting wrong? If I just do that again. Well, there we are. Missing the door, and then also look at the toilet. So there, when I hover to get the pattern up, just watch what happens with the toilet. It's getting a pattern as well. Right, and that often happens when you've got complex things to hatch around. It gets confused, and well, it's actually doing the right thing. So this is to do with a setting that you have for island detection, and you can change that. Here it's got outer, and so you can try going to normal, and you can see there that's not fixing it. So we'll try the other option, which is ignore, and you can see Well, if it's you mean solid marble, yeah. So
You just can render the...
yeah, if you wanted to, that's right. You could show a texture like a photo using Photoshop, but in AutoCAD, it notes. You just note it. Yeah. So you wouldn't try to draw it. You just note it. Yeah. There are ways you could get a hatch pattern that might give you a bit of an indication, but it's not needed. No, just notes. Yeah. So again here, the island detection is why it's doing it, but none of these options are going to make it give us what we want. So instead, what I'm going to show you is how to make your own boundary. You probably could fiddle around. You can see there actually in the end it is giving me what I want. But there are other issues you'll find with your hatch patterns that you'll get all the time. So if you get any problems and pick points, right, and that's the default option, pick points isn't working for you, what you can always do is draw a polyline. So if you draw a polyline, the shape that you want it to hatch, so here I could just trace all of these outside points around the boundary that I want to hatch. And then when I get to the toilet, I don't need to be that accurate. Because remember, we're doing the boundary for a hatch that's made up of a lot of straight lines. And these straight lines aren't going to hit every point on this curve anyway. So I'm just going to try and do a few points. I can always come back later and add in more. I'm just snapping, you can see, every so often to the points on the curve. So it doesn't take as long as you might think, tracing these curves. So there we are, that's probably good enough. Here, I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so I've gone around the WC. Now the door is obviously done with an arc, the door swing. So I'm going to ignore that actually, so I'll just go around the door opening. Yep, so we'll again just ignore it all together. And so just to give you some tips drawing polylines, try to remember where you start them. It'll sometimes show up, so you can see there the grip that's coming up, or the little marker coming up on the point that I started on, but that won't always be there, so it'll help you if you remember. And then you can type C for close, and then enter to close it when you're finished. Right, so there's the shape that I've made for the hatch boundary. So I can go back to hatch, and instead of using pick points, I can use select objects and select that polyline. Right, and so then it's gone over my door. I don't want that, so I'm going to then go to remove boundary objects. And, oh, sorry, I'm not thinking there. Sorry, I've got to select that as well. So I'm just going back to select objects, and I'll select the door. Oh, when it doesn't work. So when it doesn't work. So sometimes when you've got a complex object like this, it won't find the hatch boundary for you, and the polyline just lets you define it. So here it's working, but it's not getting the door, so I'm going to delete that hatch and then draw a rectangle over the door as well. There we go, and then now I'll do hatch again, and I can select my polyline, which is still there, and then I'll select the door or the rectangle I've drawn over the door. And sorry, it's been a bit painful. But now it may my island options. There we go. So because I've played around with the island options, it obviously was going over the door, but on the normal option there, which is the first one, normal island detection, you can see it's missing the door now. Okay, so that's good enough to start with, but then there's one other thing you should be thinking about when you're doing tiles. So have you thought about where the tiles start? Do the tiles start wherever you want, or do they start at a certain point? Exactly, that's right, exactly, that's exactly it. So, yeah, where you've got the longest area, that's in line with something that matters, and in this case, maybe the wall in the corner there, even though there's not much of a wall surface there, it would extend onto the bath, so maybe you could set out from this corner here. Okay, so that corner there, I'll say is my set out point. So I can always select the hatch, and then I'll get all the options back up, if you haven't seen that, on the ribbon. And you've got then the set origin option. So I'm just going to click that, and then click a point, and you can see then it's now starting that tile in that corner. And that's really important. You can't just leave the tiles starting from a random point. So then, I won't show you the last thing, but there's one other important thing that you should have in all the construction drawings for your bathrooms to show the drainage. So do you know what that looks like when you show the drainage in a bathroom like this? Oh, the drainage. So, exactly, yeah. So the floor waste should be there, and then you should show a line of fall to that as well. You can add that in afterwards. So that'd be enough now to get started with the bathroom. And so the main consideration there is that hatch tool, and then thinking about how with the line weights, that should give you a really nice display. No, I haven't. Oh yeah, you would do that over the middle of the tiles. Yeah, you can do that after.